and I'm very excited to be here to facilitate this panel. We have a stellar lineup with us today. We have Ananda Kumar, Vidya Atreya, Vinod Krishnan, and unfortunately, Rebecca couldn't be with us today, but she has sent us a video introduction. This is a panel about human-wildlife conflict. It is a catchphrase that we're all used to. We read about it in the newspapers, we see it on social media, we all kind of shake our heads and roll our eyes when we talk about this subject. But what are the ground realities of human-wildlife conflict? How is it portrayed to us? And what are the kind of flaws in our perception and understanding of this issue? I hope we're going to be able to dive into some of these issues today. And let's get cracking. We're going to start off with short introductions from our panel, the people here with us today. Welcome all of you. I think let's start with Anand, then on to Vidya, then Vinod. And perhaps after that, Marie, we can play this short introduction that Rebecca has sent us. So Anand, over to you.
Thank you, Cara. My name is Anand. I'm with the Nature Conservation Foundation for the past 20 years. And so I've been studying mammals for the past 20 years. And my first experience in the forests started in 1994 when I started looking at monkeys. So looking at their dominant and subordinate relationships and how infants develop their infant development and stuff. But later I got so much interested in, in elephants. So me, along with my colleagues, Divya and Shankaraman, so we started this elephant project in the Anamala Hills. So since then that I've been with elephants and to try to, I've been working with, uh, very passionate conservationists. I'm very fortunate to have them as in the group, and it's a really wonderful journey that I have.
Yeah, thanks, Anand. I'm Vidya Atreya, and like Anand, I also started working in this field 2 decades back, which just shows how old I am. But I started out as somebody who was more of a wildlife biologist only, and but I was interested in interactions between different groups of organisms. And serendipity kind of led me to the croplands, agricultural landscape of Western Maharashtra, where a lot of wildlife lives among people, and that just opened up this entire new fascinating field of study for me. And I had to look at it, I had to unlearn a lot of things, because wildlife biologists are often only focused on the animal, almost don't like people, which is why they like animals. And suddenly I found that I was looking at 2 groups of organisms, like, the wild creatures and then the human creatures, and how they interact with each other. It has like initially it started out as ecology of the leopards, and again just focused on the animals, but later on now collaborating with other social scientists, anthropologists, and so on. I'm really interested in how humans respond to the presence of these wild animals, because at the end of the day, if the humans don't want them in their land, these animals are not going to be there. And I think there's a lot of space in rural India, in the heart of rural India, to accept all this wildlife. And it fascinates me as to what is it that governs this acceptance. And that is where my fascination is now more and more leading to. So thank you for inviting me for this event.
Hi everyone, I'm Vinod. So I don't have these decades of experience in wildlife. I'm an accountant by education. But I think the heart still lies outside of the office always for me, beyond those numbers and so the first experience of actually exploring wilderness and seeing human elephant or human wildlife relationships for me was in BRT Tiger Reserve, where I worked for another organization. So I spent 3 years there, and eventually I happened to know about Anand's interest, of NCF's interest to work in Hassan, and things just fell in place. And here I am studying human elephant interactions in Hassan since 2015. And it's been pretty much a roller coaster ride. Like it's so action packed every day, and each day is a new day. And each day I've been learning so much, both from the elephants' point of view and people. So it's been like the most exhilarating and I would say an eccentric last 5 years for me. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. So this panel today is piggybacking off of two films that are playing at AltF. That's Elephants in My Backyard, which shines a spotlight on the work being done by Anand and Vinod and NCF India. And then we have Cries of Our Ancestors. Rebecca can't be here with us today, but Marie, can we play the introduction she sent, please?
Hi everyone, I'm so sorry that I couldn't be with you today. I thought I'd make this video instead to introduce our film, Cries of Our Ancestors. My name is Rebecca Kormos and I'm the co-producer and co-director of the film. I made this film with my dear friend Kalyani Mann, who's an award-winning filmmaker. We also worked really closely with Mamadou Saliou Diallo, who I've known since 1995, and he started the first environmental NGO in Guinea. Chris Brown edited the film, and with this amazing team, we created the film short, Cries of Our Ancestors. This film tells a story that I've wanted to tell for over 2 decades. Back in the mid-1990s, I traveled to Guinea for the first time. My job for 18 months was to count how many chimpanzees there were in the entire country. I lived in a tent, traveling to a new place every night, looking for signs of chimpanzees in the forest. In many parts of the country, chimpanzees had already vanished. In one area, however, a mountainous region of Guinea called the Fouta Djallon, there were chimpanzees everywhere. Back then, sitting around our tents at night, I heard the same legend almost everywhere I went, that chimpanzees used to be human. They were blacksmiths with big muscles, but they did something that angered the gods and were banished to the forest and turned into chimpanzees. Because they are our ancestor, we are forbidden to ever kill them. Since then, sadly, the number of chimpanzees across West Africa have plummeted. There are now 80% of the number of chimpanzees in the mid-1990s. This area, the Fouta Djallon, is home to 2/3 of the remaining chimpanzees and is now the stronghold for their survival. I wanted to return to Guinea to see if the same legends were being told about the chimpanzees and whether people still felt the same way about living with them side by side as they used to. Since the 1990s, Guinea has been discovered to have the largest bauxite reserves in the world under the forest where the chimpanzees live. I wanted to visit these areas to see what kind of impact on both chimpanzees and people the mining was having. This film is a result of that visit. Until that filming trip, I had not been outspoken about the mining. Guinea is one of the poorest countries in the world, and the president says that the mining will be a game changer for the country and pull Guinea out of poverty. But that's not what we witnessed. The amount of bauxite being removed from Guinea each year is unfathomable. Last year, earth totaling the weight of over 6,000 Eiffel Towers has been taken away from Guinea. What we saw was that the forest was disappearing, and with that, the animals were disappearing too. People's water sources were drying up and becoming polluted, and people are getting sick. Their crops are covered in toxic bauxite dust. Human Rights Watch has recently published a study showing that people's land is being taken from them without compensation. People in these areas are starting to rise up against the companies and the pollution and the fact that they are having their land stolen. Several communities have filed a complaint against the financial institution that is providing money to these mining companies. What I hope this film will do is to raise awareness about the terrible impact that bauxite mining is having on the chimpanzees in Guinea and on people. Aluminum is recyclable. We don't need to keep extracting more from the earth. Something I learned once I returned from the filming trip to Guinea really shocked me. Aluminum is in fact being stockpiled around the world to drive up its price on the market. These stockpiles are so large that they can be seen from space. In a recent conversation with Kalyani Ma'am, she said to me that one of the most important questions we can ask of ourselves is what kind of ancestors do we want to be for our descendants?
Thank you for that. Cries of Our Ancestors is playing at ORF. It's a beautiful short film. I encourage all of you to watch it. It runs across a lot of global themes as well, whether it is the kind of power and impact of extractive industries, complicit governments, suffering local communities and indigenous wildlife. These are issues very relevant to all of us, no matter where we live. A theme that comes across very often for me is what defines human-wildlife conflict? Is all interaction with wildlife falling under this label? I tend to think not, and I'm sure the scientists with us today are going to shed a little more light on that issue. It's so important that we perceive this issue with a little more flexibility and a little better understanding and nuance of what the ground realities are. These are not black and white kind of decisions to be made, but rather work that needs to be done slowly and steadily. Vidya, would you like to kick off by telling us about the harmony conflict spectrum when it comes to interactions with wildlife and sharing space with wild animals?
So my experience is talking to all the ecologists who actually work on this in India, especially where there is so much relationship between people and wildlife, that we all go in thinking it's conflict, 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 and then we all come out saying, oh my God, like the people are so accepting of these animals. So I guess the majority narrative in the urban space or the media space is that of conflict, and that may be also because that's generally how media functions. Another issue is that a lot of the policymakers, a lot of the conservationists are from urban landscapes, whereas rural India is so different. It's almost like another country out there, which we are not very aware of. And the narrative there is one of great acceptance. And I think that is the reason why. And it's also because they've always shared space with these wild animals for centuries, and it's part of their culture, part of their society. And it's really sad because it's very easy for you to have a conflict and but it's really hard for you to have acceptance, create acceptance in a place. It's very easy to create conflict, but it's really hard to create acceptance. And I think we already have that baseline of acceptance, which will erode really fast if we keep harping on this concept of conflict without really understanding the nitty-gritties, is my experience. I guess Vinod and Anand will be able to say better.
Yeah, Vinod, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I mean, completely agree with Vidya, because what I've also seen is that small farmers who've lost everything, like their livelihoods for the year, are still, empathizing with elephants. They always tell me that, I mean, where will these animals go? They're also losing their own forests. So there's a great sense of acceptance already. But yes, that is one. On the other hand, I also see that the tolerance is also sort of deteriorating in certain circumstances, especially when there are incidents of human deaths, uh, uh, or a major crop damage, especially right now, because it's almost paddy's around the corner, like the harvest is around the corner, especially when paddy gets damaged towards the end of the harvest. Generally, tempers are slightly high, but I would still agree with Vidya that there is this innate sense of sharing spaces, especially in rural India, and that is very evident here as well. Just that large mammals sharing spaces with them can be potentially dangerous for their own life. So I think it's a genuine, I would say, a fear that what if you encounter an elephant? It can be potentially dangerous. Let's
Of course.
yeah. So yeah.
Anand, you need to unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing because mostly the conflict is seen as an individual perception or at the group level perceptions, and uh, it's a yeah, in our experience from Valparai, whatever the little bit of experience what we have from this small area, just to give you a small incident that happened. Okay. So way back in 2004, I received a call at 4 o'clock in the morning from a lady who said that elephants damaged my house. So I reached the spot immediately because I received call at 6 o'clock here. I reached the spot, and so the entire house, the outside wall was damaged, and because in Valparai the houses have front and back doors. So she narrated the incident that around 3 o'clock in the morning, elephants came, and this suddenly husband, wife, and their kids noticed an elephant cough in their bedroom. Suddenly at 3 o'clock in the morning, it was a really shocking thing for them. And both husband and wife, they took away their children, ran towards the back door, and in the process, that elephant cough made squeaky sound. Then mother pulled down the wall. So, but in spite of all this, a traumatic incident, that lady, that woman told me that I can feel that how I feel about my children's safety. That's how the elephant mother would have felt about her calf. So that has actually, it's an amazing tolerance that people have. It's a really, because it's only the kind of trauma that they undergo, the fear that they will people experience will make them really angry towards the animals. Otherwise, most of the time that you'll see that people have a lot of tolerance. I do agree with Vidya and what Vinod has said. So amazing tolerance, and there is a clear demarcation between people in rural India and people in urban settings. Yeah.
Uh, Although, can I say something here?
Of
Cara?
course,
Yeah.
of course.
So that is also what I thought, that, like, urban Indians, okay, whatever, even I'm part of them, but, rural India is. But when we started our work in Bombay, it was just incredible because we got people to completely change the way they look at leopards. So if you ask me, the rural landscape still has stories, myths, inclusion in their culture, in their society. It's normal for them. But in urban landscapes, where we are far distanced from wildlife, and media is always, heightening the fear, I think it's possible to actually change the narrative. And I often say that fear and understanding are two sides of the same coin, and it's up to you to decide which side to show it. And the people of Bombay have really, like, amazed me, because the way they accept leopards now is unbelievable. And because I'm so old and I was there 20 years back, I can see the difference in the way people respond to the presence of these animals. So there's a lot of hope, if you ask me.
I really love what you say about fear and understanding being two sides of the same coin. And I think you're absolutely right. Empathy is such a huge part of being human. And it is such an important emotion to exercise and to grow on and to focus on, as opposed to always focusing on more aggressive kind of the innate aggressiveness of humans, if there is such a thing. And, I really, when I think about what you say about Bombay, this image comes to mind. There's a photographer, Nayan Khanolkar, and I know he was camera trapping in Mumbai's forests. And he took this series of images. And in one image, it's maybe around 4:20 in the morning. It's dark. And you see this gorgeous, like, leopard caught on his camera trap. And this time stamp, literally 2 minutes later, is of a lady moving out of her house to go, go to the washroom. And in just that span of 2 minutes, that teaches you so much about, like, what sharing spaces is and how we are actually living alongside animals all the time. Of course, I do have one kind of experience from the opposite end of the spectrum, and that is seeing a mob of men harass a herd of elephants in Orissa, in Atgar. And it was a incredibly traumatic experience. For me, I can't even imagine what it was for the elephants. And there was something extremely vicious about it. So I guess what I'm getting at is that there's no one way to look at human wildlife conflict or human wildlife interactions. And each case needs to be seen individually. And we have to have some kind of faith uh, in the human being, in what our humanity is. Which brings us to media portrayals. Both elephants and leopards receive relatively more kind of screen time and news attention than other animals. But is the portrayal of their interactions with humans apt? I would love to know from the local level at your field sites what the perception of these animals is, and then at a national level what you feel about reportage on human wildlife conflict as related to the species you're working on. Any one of you can take this up first.
Uh, can I go first?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, I would like to show that picture. Can I request the first and second pictures which I shared?
Yeah, Maria, can you put those on?
You see that? Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah. See, perhaps that this is taken in Valpara region. So this female, we named her as Monica. She's no more now. She died a couple of years ago. If you look at this picture, that the kind of, it's an elephant in a residential area. And when I was studying this particular elephant, and she was the leader of her group, Monica Herd, and people used to name her a terror elephant. Okay. And most of the media was used to call, because that herd had 9 individuals, and the media portrayed in local newspapers, Tamil newspapers, we used to call them as a killer gang. Yeah. So whenever there is this herd was seen, then all the newspapers used to carry that, oh, the killer gang has come. So the 9 Ombud Kosti means 9 elephants gang. So, but the same elephant you see here in a residential colony, and completely docile and completely, she accepted the people here, and people later the people never disturbed her. So they just simply watch this particular elephant because over the years that when media realized that um, the reasons behind people losing lives and the kind of damages that are happening because of various reasons, and those factors are fixed, then media started portraying it as very positively. So there was a dramatic shift, the way that media has actually come up with the articles. Even recently that they started saying that, hey, we need to really understand these elephants. So that was a shift that I never expected, that media people, local newspapers put it up in their news as a news thing in newspapers. So this is really an interesting thing. So what I strongly feel is that one side, I do agree that a lot of sensationalism that would happen. Okay. And the journalist would go to the field, and he will also listen to the people, what people say, because when people are really scared, and they will put it up, and they also add lots of other things to the news item. But when the situation becomes the frustration of people uh, goes down, and when people also start seeing elephants as a part of their landscape, you will also see a change in the way that media reporters actually report the incidents. So that's what I would see it. And if you look at, we are just trying to get close to that, perhaps that we need to make a lot of effort. Can I request you to show the second picture, please? In Hassan, if you see that this is one elephant called Bhima. Um, People love him actually, but we haven't got that kind of opportunity to work with media in this landscape. Perhaps that in the coming years, with that we would like to work with them and show them the factuals about the human elephant relationships in this particular landscape. Perhaps we would expect the similar kind of thing as we see in Valpara region. Yeah, that's what I see.
Vinod, go for it, and then I'll say.
Yeah, so just to add to what Anand was telling, in Hassan, the local media always, like if an elephant is peacefully walking on the road, there have been incidents that then portrayed, the narrative will be like, oh, look at Hassan, elephants are walking on the road in broad daylight. So what it creates is a perception where, for an average reader, it looks like as though elephants are here to just cause chaos, right? The narrative is so important. So locally, of course, there's a lot of, I would say, a sort of a negative sentiment. But having said that, for example, this particular individual Bhima is very docile. And interestingly, people know individual elephants, like at least some of them. And why they follow him, he's like a celebrity here. So they really like love him. They just want to, they just follow him wherever he goes. And it's very different how they perceive these animals, even the media. I remember one particular incident when a couple of years ago there was a human death, and people wanted, obviously, when there's a human death, there's demand to capture elephants. And interestingly, the very same people who are demanding capture said, "Don't capture Bhima because we know him. He's not, he's really harmless." So it's very interesting. It's so complex that sometimes you just try and find what rationality there could be behind these sort of voices, but it's very dynamic. It keeps shifting. There is no one constant. Like in Valparai, how Anand was telling that now the media also writes very responsibly. No, this is a completely different contrast in Hassan, where the narrative is very sort of dynamic. It sways between, yes, the elephants are losing habitat, where will they go to? Oh, look at these elephants, they're causing so much damage. So it's always oscillating between positive and negative most of the time.
Vidya, over to you. And maybe you can also tell us this one thing, that how do we make that oscillation stop? And how do we focus towards a solution-oriented narrative as opposed to an inflammatory one?
Correct. So what you're saying is very, very relevant, because all the time we are, it's an inflammatory narrative that everybody is talking about, including us biologists. And I think we really need to focus on the solution-based narrative. And again, I'm going to go back to our work in Maharashtra, even in rural Maharashtra and in urban Bombay, that we had the leopards being completely demonized by not just the Bombay-based media, as well as BBC and all. I remember, 10 years back, it was just man-eaters in the title of that is what they were looking at. But only with constant engagement, and that is what we did in Bombay, because we realized that what was happening in Bombay was, because there was such a fear, whenever anybody saw a leopard, they just wanted it out. And everybody thought there was a solution, but it was actually worsening the problem. And the media, we realized, is such an important stakeholder in this, because if we sensitize them, then they can change the entire narrative, which is what they did. And it has to be engagement with them, not when a problem has happened, but before a problem has happened. As often now we have started saying that we cannot react, we need to respond. So we can't wait till something has happened. We have to start the work beforehand in peacetime. So we engaged with the Bombay Press Club, with the Mumbai Patrakar Sangh, that's a Marathi, and had media workshops where media personnel, without any bias, okay, everybody was invited to the park. Presentation was given on the role they play in actually easing the conflict, because when they give a much more neutral narrative that is aimed at solutions, a kid was killed, and then she had to take a road which was totally had shrubbery on both sides, and there was no school bus to her school. And the media report was that yes, a child was killed, but the BEST, the Bombay Transport Agency, doesn't have a bus service for these children here. And that was such a solution-oriented reporting, and the government started the bus service. So media can play such an important role in that. What I would like to point out is I don't agree that every thing is individual and stuff. I think there are a lot of generalities, and a really important generality. Why are the people in Orissa annoyed? They're annoyed because nobody is engaging with them. Why were the people in Bombay annoyed? Why were the people in Valparai before Anand started his work there annoyed at the elephants? Because nobody was reaching out to them, listening to their problems and offering them a solution. And I think that's a very important generality. We have to engage with the people, reach out to them, tell them, okay, here we are to help you. And that really changes the way they respond to you. Okay. And another thing also I would like to point out, which even I kind of, as a youngster, I never thought that the local people have the same kind of fascination for animals like I do. And I don't know why that is. That's really bad. But to me, any human being in a peaceful setting is always fascinated by wild animals. And which is why in Anand's images, or even I have some images of leopards and people, they are fascinated. But so it's really important that we accept that and realize it, because at the end of the day, the local people have the fate of these animals in their hands, not people like you and me or people who go for safaris. We don't affect the conservation of these animals as much as the local people. So, yeah, that's all I would like to say.
Thanks, Vidya. Honestly, I couldn't agree more when it comes to community outreach and just listening and being more empathetic and not trying to impose our ideas of what conservation should be on communities who are living lives we have no idea about and don't experience. Vinod, I want to come to you because I watched elephants in my backyard the other day, and there's this completely awful scene where a wild elephant is being captured, and it's intensely emotional. It's just heartbreaking. I want you to tell me a little bit about witnessing that. There's a point at which I think Anand says this is not human-wildlife conflict, this is human-human conflict. I want you to talk a little about what that could mean, and then maybe tell us about how you decided to make this film, and Anand can potentially follow up on that.
Yeah, so I mean, captures are always very difficult. Uh, I mean, we are trying very hard to engage with people and also the government departments to, sort of engage with them in a more positive way, try to bring in more proactive steps. Captures have been tried out earlier, and I mean, in fact, Hassan is an area which has been classified as a removal zone, so previously. And we've seen mass captures, like now it's isolated captures, but 2014, there were 22 elephants captured in a single operation that spanned over a few months. But it really didn't, I mean, there were continued incidents of human deaths, there was crop damage, and situation on ground really didn't change much. So then we started working and we started to really understand how elephants are moving around in this landscape. So we've taken, really small steps to get where we are today. And it's quite heartbreaking when you've put in so much effort on the one hand to really work hard and try and get a middle ground where both people and the animal are, it's try to create this win-win situation. But some things we've also realized that I mean, the stakes are so high sometimes that you're just a small blip in the larger scheme of things. I think that is also a reality that we have to accept. So many times, when we speak to farmers or coffee planters or just local people, everyone's looking for that instant solution, right? Everybody wants a permanent solution or just this instant solution. But the real difficult part is to sort of sustain the effort and engage with people and tell them, look, we are working towards solutions, but you have to give us some time and some space. And that is the most difficult part. And yeah, I mean, it's a mixed bag always, but I'm quite confident, but when we look back to where it was when we started in 2015 to where it is now, I still see a lot of hope, and I strongly believe that we are moving in the right direction. Considering, I would also acknowledge the efforts of the forest department here, because they've also brought in these rapid response teams, and so it is a sort of a effort that's there on all sides, uh, and we're just working towards it. But yes, I would still say that these captures can be avoidable completely. That is my personal view, and I'd let Anand to sort of follow.
And then please tell us about captures, but also tell us about this film in particular. What prompted it, and what do you hope it will achieve?
I'd say, yeah. So captures are really uh, very heartbreaking instances or events that would happen. But there are both sides to it. One is that a poor farmer losing the entire crop, and that particular farmer doesn't know how to feed his family. So that's one way of looking at the anger and the frustration in people. So when we reached the Hassan thing, the first thing what we were told by the people was that you people come from outside, and you do your research and write reports and give it to the higher authorities, then they will pass on some orders. Then we have to obey those orders. Why should we obey? So that's a really a valid question that people have actually asked. And are you going to take the responsibility of us losing our lives? I can't drop my daughter to the school because all the time that we are living in a fear of elephants. So these are the questions that are really very valid that people have actually posed to us. And we told them that look at this way, that we are trying to understand you and the elephants, and so we will try to what we find in our research, and we would like to share it with you. So that's how it started. But in between that, we didn't have anything to offer or to share with them, even though the results were actually conveyed to people there and the department. But they were thinking that they were losing the time. And so there is a lot of pressure on the forest department to capture elephants, even though they also knew that the captors are not going to uh, reduce the conflict situation. But it's just only that instant solution which the people would want. But looking at, so it's a kind of, when there is a capture that happens, it's always one side of the people are saying that you won't do anything. The people blame the forest department, and the forest department says it's a kind of conflict between the forest department people and the general public. So in the whole process, what happens that we are unable to understand the problem and move towards the solution. That is not the way that we are looking at, but we always try to work from what the solution is, then we try to fix the problem. So that is not the way that one should actually go. So all this would require some time to understand what's going on. Is there any way to address the issue? So yeah, in the while trying to do this, these captures happened, which was really traumatic, and I couldn't tolerate when elephants, such a huge animal, was captured, and it's really uh, a, a traumatic experience anyway. So, and what was your other question with regard to
A little
film
about
thing?
the film, the experience of
Yes,
putting
yes.
together the film. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when Vikram came to Mysore, he approached me and he said that he would like to discuss about what we are doing both in Valparai and Hassan. And I told him that see, it's better to convey the facts, what's actually happening on the ground, and which was what Vikram was also looking at. So often what happens that most of the um, uh, positive results that will be shown as a glamorous movie kind of thing. Yeah. But in the process of getting a positive result, there are lots of ups and downs that people would undergo, and where the people and elephants both will suffer. So that is what Vikram wanted to bring in. So he actually followed the instances, incidents, and the lifestyles of people, and the kind of conditions in which the elephants live. So the entire scenario, the entire on-ground situation that he wanted to bring in this film, so that that will actually show the intensity of the interactions between people and elephants. So both want to survive and both want to live together, or both want to share spaces in the same
Yeah.
place. So that is what the film actually portrays, and there are ways to deal with these things, not the captures. So
Yeah.
that's what he wanted to convey.
Lovely. So, Vidya, you've had an interesting experience with cinema and film too, quite different from this. But before we get to you, I'd love for us to just see the trailer for the film Elephants in My Backyard. Can we play that, please?
டெய்லி ഇവിടെ வந்து ஆன இருந்துட்டு நமக்கு ஏனே உண்மையை பேசிட்டு இருக்கேன் என்ன பண்றேன் பண்றேன்னு சொல்லுவோம் இவங்க அது செட் ஆகாது நம்மளுக்கு இல்ல நாங்க பாத்துக்கிறோம் ஆனே நாங்க பாத்துக்கிறோம் ஆனே சாப்பாடு இல்ல இல்ல நீ சாப்பிட்டு போற எப்படி எங்களுக்கு எங்க பொழப்ப ஆயிரும் போ கீழே போ
Thank you so much for playing that. For all of you who are watching, Elephants in My Backyard is playing at the film festival. Please, please watch it. It's such an important film to understand the realities of human and elephant interactions and conflict in these parts of India. We're running very tight on time, but before we take audience questions, I would love for each one of you to give us a wish list. Vidya, and maybe you can kick off by first telling us a little about Ajoba and your experience with that, whether it impacted your work in any way, whether it taught you something about film and cinema and conservation, and then lead into your wish list for addressing this issue of human and wildlife conflicts and interactions.
Yeah, so Ajoba was a really interesting experience because it was a Marathi feature film made on the leopard Ajoba that we had collared, who walked 125 kilometers and went to Bombay in 25 days. And I think he won the hearts of a lot of people because Ajoba means grandfather in Marathi, and he was an elderly leopard. So an elderly leopard against all odds, you know, walking such a big distance, going to Bombay, and then finally after 2 years, he was killed in a road accident over there, and he hadn't done anything to anybody in that time. And it was really interesting for me because I am not this Hollywood, Bollywood kind of person, and then interacting with the script writer and the director and the producer. It was a totally different world, but fascinating. And I think it made a lot of impact in the way audiences that we normally don't reach out to, like people who watch movies and these things are important. It made them understand a little bit more about these issues, and I think that was a really big plus point. So yeah, and the wish list is that I think we use so even as biologists we are focused on the animal, and it's often only the biologists who are giving recommendations to ease conflict, and we are not at all capable or trained in dealing with human issues. So our recommendations are largely techno management methods, that is like capture it or chase it or whatever, but it's not rooted in long-term solutions. And also I think we can only give the knowledge, but the other stakeholder who's super important is the forest department. And in my experience, I work a lot with the forest department, and I've had like really, the Bombay project was one such collaboration. Without their support, it would have never started, and it would not be still ongoing. And they also realize that you can't just look at the animal, but that places them out of their comfort zone, because they are trained to only look at wildlife and forests, just like us biologists. So they also have a hard time engaging with people. And often a lot of these conflicts are because the local people are not getting any help from the agency that most represents the wildlife, that's forest department. So my wish list is that they also need to really understand the importance of human dimension, just as us biologists. Thanks.
I think that's excellent. Anand, up to you.
Yeah. Oh, I think I always feel that many times that what in case of elephants or any other wildlife that is interacting with the people, that understanding the needs of wildlife of particular species or species that are living among people, and needs of people, and what government does and what scientific community suggests, there is complete mismatch among these different sections. So I think I strongly feel that we really need to have a balanced approach. Yeah, unless there is a match among these sections of the people, we will not be able to make a big difference to the conservation of wildlife unless we understand this. So one of the things that I really, there is a tremendous amount of passionate people within the department. There's one forest guard. I would like to show that picture. I would request the picture to be shown.
Again?
Mary, there's a third picture that Anand had sent. Can we see that, please?
Yes, sorry. It's just it's freezing on my end here. Sorry.
No worries. Anand, maybe you can start telling us a little about that picture.
So this is, if you look at this picture, that there's a forest guard walking in front of his bima, and he warns people that not to get close to the animal. So look at it, how many, there are passionate, they're like soldiers, all the time that they are tracking elephants and try to warn people. So that way that there is a positive, there are proactive steps by the forest departments to safeguard elephants and also for people. So they have a dual role that they need to play. So if departments can actually understand that what people requirements and what animal requirements, I'm sure that they could play a much better role, and they could play an important thing, which will actually bring coexistence between wildlife and people. So that's what I wish.
Yeah. Thank you. Vinod, you want to add to that? Here we have the image.
Yes, sorry, everything just froze for a second and I had a little freak out, but I'm glad we're back.
Yeah, that's all right. And Anand explained it super well. So we already had it in our minds.
Thank you.
Vinod, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I also strongly feel that when, especially in human-dominated landscapes, I think it's really important to work with people and work with people over longer periods of time. Uh, I think that is where the key lies, as far as I'm concerned, with my own experiences here. Uh, and yes, my wish list, of course, would be to someday see some sense of, I mean, at least where an environment where people and elephants are sharing spaces in Hassan, and that can only happen when there, like what Anand was telling, when there is this common ground where people are thinking in the right direction. So hopefully we'll be able to get to that point someday, and we're trying really hard. So that will be that really is what I would really wish for
Yeah.
someday.
Thank you for sharing that. I hope all your wishes come true, and that goes for all of you. There are so many more things to talk about. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. For example, I would have loved to discuss a little about political will to address these issues, about corporate and industrial activity and what kind of conflict that perpetuates as against, wildlife in specific rural communities, how sometimes it can pit rural human communities and wildlife communities against urban needs and wants. But I think we're going to have to save that for another day. I believe we have audience questions that Marie is going to be moderating coming up. Marie, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. That was really insightful. And I'm actually going to be cheeky and ask a question myself, because I had the pleasure of talking to Vikram the other day, who made this film. And we talked about one of the moments that stood out to our team, where he filmed you, Vinod, and Anand, you were there as well. I think it was after the capture, and it was just very emotional. And he was right there in that space with you. So I was wondering how you view the relationship, your relationship, and how it has developed with the filmmaker, with Vikram, and how important that was when you saw the film, and how the whole issue was communicated.
Um, oh, it's my turn. Okay. Yeah. So it's a difficult question to answer, but yeah, in the field, it was really good being with Vikram, and he tried to portray things and bring in many factual situations into the film. I never thought that this would come up for really this good. Okay, and it would make such an impact thing. After seeing the movie only, that I realized that, oh my God, these are the things that happened, because it took nearly 1 year or 1.5 year time for him to, picture or shoot all the incidents that happened. So when the capture happened, I was really shaken up. Uh, uh, yeah, I don't know what to say. Absolutely. Yeah.
Can I just add to Anand's?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I really wanted to tell is, Vikram, when he came with this one man with one camera, and all he said was, forget that there is a camera here. It's just two guys. I'm just going to follow you. Think that there is some guy following you, and I will be asking some questions. And the most of the footages, in fact, in the film was, although to sort of start filming he took a lot of time, because he also wanted to understand thoroughly what's going on here. But the entire footage, almost, I guess, 70-80% of it, all those events unfolded within a short span of time, which is 1 week, which was really like quite overwhelming for me, because I had not experienced protests that spanned for a week, a capture, radio collaring, like everything was happening within a week's time. So, and Vikram was there in the thick of things. Uh, well, the moment of captures usually are very sort of traumatic, and there's this point where you just go blank. Your mind stops working, and you start questioning whether what you're trying to do is really worth it sometimes. But what also keeps us going is after the capture is we also know that there's so much more work to do. It just doesn't end there. So I mean, there have been times when both Anand and I have really felt, oh, maybe it's not working here. But there are these small glimpses of hope, and I think we managed to at least take the positives forward. And so far as the film is concerned, yes, it's such a huge impact. Like even I didn't realize that it's so powerful, and I'm actually living there. Only when I saw it through another lens, I realized, oh my God, there's so much happening here. So it was quite overwhelming for me, and I mean, it's a very honest ground report more than a film. It's just filmed as things are unfolding, and that is the best part. There's barely anything that's staged here. It's just as it happens. So that is something that I really like about the film, and I would urge everyone to watch it.
Yeah, and I mean, it did also move our jury. Sorry to interrupt briefly, but you've also won one of the awards. So also congratulations again on being part of that. I felt a bit starstruck at the beginning of this conversation because I've only seen you on screen. Good to talk to them.
If there is time, just can I make one point here?
Of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thanks. See, one of the things that which when Vikram wrote to me and said that I would like to do some movie or on elephants, I didn't take him seriously. Okay. And only thing is that I told him that when he came to Mysore to discuss about his plan, so I told him, if you are interested in put forth the factual thing, what's exactly happening on the ground, so then only that it would make sense, a proactive involvement and of people and the department and stuff. He was open to ideas, so that was a really great thing, because Vikram said that, told me that, Anand, I am here to bring out the facts, so not to portray it as a glamorous kind of thing. So that's really an important aspect, that you could actually recognize that and to follow it. So that's the main important thing. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. There are more questions, but we have one more event after this and we don't want to push it back too far. We thank you so much for your time. Cara, your questions were incredible and everyone's contribution are very much valued to this festival and beyond. We really cherish your work. So thank you so much. Keep working hard. I hope we'll all keep in touch. And if you want to, you can also tune into our next and last session for today, which is all about storytelling, which has been done so well in this film, as well as in Cries of Our Ancestors and many others. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye bye.